Good afternoon. This is Steve Caton, the Science and Operations Officer with the National Weather Service in Blacksburg. It's Tuesday, November 30th, approaching 5 o'clock, and we're going to give you a quick update on the current weather situation, the significant weather system that's impacting our area, with the most significant impacts expected to come in late this evening and overnight tonight. The update on the radar and the surface analysis shows the cold front now approaching the western slopes of the Appalachian Mountains. It's drawing in lots of moisture off the Gulf of Mexico, and while we've had some rain that's moved through this area, it hasn't been all that significant, but the heavier rain is now just along the front and approaching the western slopes of the mountains, actually getting into far southwest North Carolina. Meanwhile, the warm front out ahead of that, you can see that's beginning to lift northward and kind of pinch together as the strong southerly flow tries to encroach upon that stable, cooler air north of that, and eventually we expect that front to jump to the north of our area late this evening and overnight tonight. As we get into the forecast for about 7 o'clock this evening, just a couple hours from now, that frontal boundary will be moving into the mountains. You can see the warm front is expected to jump north. It may not happen quite this quickly, but by later in the evening, we do expect it to jump north, certainly by midnight. But as that moves north, we will increase the severe weather threat out ahead of it. Anywhere along the cold front itself will be where the heavier lines of showers and perhaps some thunderstorms can form, producing high enough rainfall rates for potential flash flooding. Behind the front, as the winds shift to the west, those winds will be not quite as strong overall, so the wind threat for the far southwestern parts of our areas, or I should say the far western parts of our area, will begin to diminish a little bit, but there could be strong winds with the line of storms just along that and ahead of the front still. Now as we get to about midnight or so, that frontal boundary moves out into the Piedmont areas. And again, just out ahead of that is where we expect the potentially severe weather to be. And then by 7 a.m. Wednesday morning, that front will be near the coast with only some lingering wraparound moisture. Much colder air moving in behind us. That'll be a significant difference with temperatures dropping throughout the day Wednesday and changing over in the morning to some snow showers, but only on those far western slopes and the higher elevations in West Virginia, far southwest Virginia, and perhaps the higher elevations of northwest North Carolina. Not expecting much in the way of snow accumulations, though, maybe an inch or so at the most, especially up towards Greenbrier County. So we got to get through the next 12 to 15 or 16 hours or so overnight tonight as this front pushes through. A little bit more detailed look at what we can expect with the line of showers and storms tonight. This is one of our local models, high-resolution model that's showing a forecast radar depiction, what the radar might look like as we go through the overnight hours. This is basically about right now with the heavier rainfall just beginning to move into the mountains. And then as we get into the evening hours, you can see that moves through into the North Carolina mountains, far southwest Virginia. And then very late this evening, as we approach the midnight hour, that heavier line begins to move out into the Piedmont. This is where we think the severe weather threat will begin to increase as that warm front moves north of this area, and this begins to tap some of that very strong wind shear and a little bit more unstable environment. And so with these heavier bands of rain, not only the high rainfall rates and potentially flash flooding, but we could now then have some severe weather potential as this is able to bring some of that high momentum air down to the surface. And with the wind shear, we also expect an isolated tornado threat. We'll detail those just a little bit later here. We got to get this line through the area, which is going to take much of the overnight hours, and then probably not until about 5, 6 in the morning before it clears to the east of our county warning area. And until it does so, that threat for severe weather will continue, and even isolated flash flooding is possible anywhere along this line. And we expect the higher flash flood threat, though, will be as it moves through the mountains where we've already had some precipitation, and where it'll be enhanced a little bit by the upslope flow just along and ahead of that line. So basically from late this evening in the mountains to midnight across the foothills and into the western Piedmont, and then 4 or 5, maybe even as late as 6 in the morning before it finally gets east of the far eastern Piedmont areas in Virginia and North Carolina. The Storm Prediction Center, if I can go to the overview. Alright, shows we still have the slight risk from basically the Blue Ridge eastward, slight risk of severe weather in general. Tornado watches have been issued just off to our southwest, just coming up almost to the Boone and Yadkin area. So that tornado threat is getting closer and closer. We expect that maybe by later this evening, late evening, maybe close to midnight, there'll be a need for an additional tornado watch, possibly a severe thunderstorm watch, but conditions right now look like we'll continue to see tornado watches out ahead of this line that may need to be issued for north central North Carolina and south central and eastern parts of eastern Virginia. We'll see what the thinking is in a few hours from now, whether another one will need to be issued. Within that area, we do expect really a pretty good wind threat anywhere east of the Blue Ridge, especially as you get into the Piedmont. As far as very brief, maybe 15 to 20 minutes of very strong winds with some of these storms. It won't be everywhere, but certainly some straight line winds are possible anywhere along that line. And then the tornado threat would probably be the greatest as you get across the far southeast part of our county warning area down towards Danville, South Boston, and then maybe even a little northeast of that down into North Carolina. But we'll be watching that carefully too. Now, as far as the current hazards that we have in effect, for the next few hours this evening, we still have the wind advisory for the strong south winds, 50 miles per hour in isolated areas are still possible until that front moves through, say by 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening in these locations. The flash flood watch continues for an additional 2, maybe as much as 3 inches in some isolated locations. Anywhere in the mountains or the foothills is possible. Again, where some rain has already occurred, additional rainfall will run off very quickly. Doesn't mean that isolated flash flooding can't occur out here in the Piedmont areas, but we think that line will be moving fast enough that there will be a little less of a threat. But we'll have to watch out for some of the more populated areas where there's more pavement, more rapid runoff. Lynchburg, Danville, Martinsville may see a chance of some flooding in those areas too. But severe weather threat, of course, is the bigger concern as you get into the Piedmont in this area in pink, where we again expect mainly damaging straight line winds, but isolated tornadoes not out of the question overnight tonight, mainly well after midnight towards as late as 5 or so in the morning. Our latest rainfall forecast hasn't changed a whole lot, just a slight difference in the maximum locations, more in the central part of the area, but again we're looking for almost 2 inches in most of these locations, a little over 2 inches, 2.5, isolated 3 perhaps along the Blue Ridge, and then 1.5 inches or so out in the far east as that line begins to accelerate a little bit, and those heavy rainfall rates won't last quite as long. Finally, we are a little concerned about some of the rises that will occur on the rivers due to all the runoff. Right now, we're not forecasting any significant flooding. South Boston, some minor flooding. Many of these other locations you see in yellow are just getting to action stage. At least we think that will occur later Wednesday night due to the runoff. But you'll need to visit the Advanced Hydrologic Prediction Service page here, AHPS, from our website to get details on the specific river locations. But we think the Dan River, Roanoke River probably have the greatest threat for getting near or just above flood stage in a few locations. That's about all I have for now. I do urge everybody to stay tuned to the weather overnight tonight, Weather Radio, our webpage, weather.gov/Blacksburg, because we will likely be issuing additional severe weather watches and warnings, as well as flash flood warnings throughout the overnight hours. A very tricky time to be dealing with significant weather. But hopefully by 6 in the morning or so, everything will move well east. This will probably be the last briefing that we do, unless there's significant changes in the morning or we have significant changes in our river forecast, for example. We may not do a briefing unless those changes are taking place. So appreciate your attention, and everybody have a safe overnight tonight. Thank you.